You're on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of May 6, 2025. A huge number of events have taken place today, so let's get started. We're moving with you to the South Donetsk sector of the front, where a lot of news is coming in. And we'll begin directly with the villages of Zelenopol, Greenfield, and Novopol. Let me remind you that over the past few days, the Russian army has been actively advancing in this sector. The settlement of Novopol is under massive bombardment by Russian aviation. Strikes are being carried out with artillery, FAB bombs, and Sontsapek, sun-heat thermobaric systems. As you can see, practically everything in the path of the Russian army is being wiped out as they gradually advance from both the south and the east. Over the past day, several additional adjustments have appeared on maps published by both neutral and pro-Russian cartographers. The progress is minor, but the most important thing is that the momentum is being maintained. Every day in this sector, we see small territorial gains. This is roughly how the map looked by the end of May 2nd, and starting from that day, we've been making small adjustments daily. Whether based on confirmed data, independent neutral sources, or pro-Ukrainian cartographers, we're making these updates, and we can see that the Russian army is gradually reducing the distance to both settlements. It's possible that as early as today, during the night between May 6th and 7th, combat operations will begin within the village of Novopol. Well, we'll keep watching. Let me remind you that from May 7th to 8th, the Russian side will declare a ceasefire, albeit a unilateral one. So in reality, the Russian armed forces have only about 24 hours left to conduct active combat operations on all fronts. After that, the Russian army will most likely resume its offensive only on May 11th. Next, we're moving to the South Donetsk, Novopavlovsk-Bogatyr direction. Here, Russian units have so far failed to consolidate and expand their control zone in the southeastern part of the settlement. We continue to receive objective control footage from the northwestern and northeastern sectors. In this video, we can see a strike on a temporary deployment point of Ukrainian FPV drone operators in the village. So we can see that despite the pressure and all the attempts to advance, the Ukrainian side is holding Bogatyr relatively firmly. Next, we move to the Novopavlovsk sector of the front. Here, the Russian army continues its advance toward the regional border. Today, footage was published showing the aftermath of strikes on the settlement of Novopavlovka. As you can see, the main bridge, which the Ukrainian armed forces used to supply their troops both in the village and to the east, has been destroyed. Of course, logistics here haven't completely collapsed, but the cost and quality of this logistics have significantly worsened compared to what was possible just 2 weeks ago. The Russian army is advancing toward the settlement of Kotliarovka, which, according to both pro-Ukrainian and neutral cartographers, is already at least 60% under the control of the Russian armed forces. Some pro-Russian sources have already fully marked Kotliarovka as captured. It's possible that tomorrow, May 7th, 2025, the Russian Ministry of Defense will finally confirm this information and put an end to the question. Let me remind you that at the moment, the distance from the possible Russian positions near Kotliarovka to the regional border is no more than 2.7 kilometers. In reality, there are no serious defensive lines left in front of the Russian army. Of course, there are many tree lines where Ukrainian units are likely concentrated. However, according to at least open-source information, Ukrainian units are not in heavily fortified positions. These are just tree lines. Maybe some have managed to dig in, but we understand that a few FAB bombs, a thermobaric strike, and Russian units could break through. They might even reach the Dniprovsky region, and perhaps tomorrow a Russian flag will appear there. At least, according to a large number of political and military experts, this is the kind of media victory, or rather media objective, that the Russian military command has set for itself in the next 24 to 36 hours before the start of the May ceasefire. Next, we're moving to the Pakovsk sector of the front. There have been numerous adjustments and geolocations here. If we look at the map, just on the eve of the May holidays and the May ceasefire, the Russian side launched a large-scale offensive, advancing across a broad front spanning several dozen kilometers. If we examine all the marked adjustments on the map, the Russian army was advancing along a front approximately 32 kilometers wide in a northwestern direction. As we understand, this is a fairly powerful offensive. Now let's break it down step by step. We'll start with the southwesternmost part, the settlement of Lisovka. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that the center troop grouping has fully established control over Lisovka. Based on this information and official statement, the map has been updated. Lisovka is now fully marked as controlled. We can see that the Russian army is gradually advancing further north toward Sukhoi Yar. Next, we move slightly northeast toward Hrodivka. Today, Ukrainian sources from the 38th Marine Brigade published objective control footage. It shows a small assault by Russian units, a tank with mine-clearing equipment and several infantry fighting vehicles moving toward a stronghold west of Hrodivka. We then see a series of FPV drone strikes, some of which managed to stop Russian vehicles. It's hard to say whether the assault on this stronghold actually happened, but the latest geolocation from the video confirms Russian forces reached within 400 meters of it. There's a very high chance that the Russian assault troops managed to break into the stronghold, meaning it may already be under Russian control. To summarize, we've seen an offensive in this direction. Next, we move to Mirolyubovka. Ukrainian sources also published footage showing FPV drone strikes against Russian equipment, personnel, tanks, and supply vehicles, referred to as Mongols and Bukhankas, in and around the settlement, primarily in its southern part. Based on this footage, the map has been slightly adjusted, confirming Russian advances from the southern part of Mirolyubovka toward the north. Now we proceed toward Malinovka, still along the eastern flank of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Here we have more objective control footage, some already published by Russian sources. The footage shows Russian armored columns moving from Vodyain II through fields and obstacles toward the eastern part of Malinovka. We can see the Ukrainian side attempting to stop them with artillery and drone strikes, but the Russian assault troops continue advancing. A 3-minute-long video shows Russian paratroopers entering the settlement, landing and securing the first building in the easternmost part. The final frames confirm the landing point, providing clear evidence that Russian forces have indeed entered and possibly even advanced further into Malinovka. However, there's no confirmed information on deeper progress yet. Next, we move to Novaya Poltavka. Here, Ukrainian forces attempted a counterattack near Novaya Poltavka and Berezovka, using just one armored vehicle and a 5-man assault team. They landed near a stronghold that Ukrainian forces had abandoned days earlier without a fight. A new luxury stronghold, fully reinforced with wood. The landing happened, but the Ukrainian assault team failed to achieve anything. They simply ran between walls and corridors while being targeted by mortars and FPV drones, while Russian soldiers barricaded themselves in separate rooms of the stronghold. Based on this footage, we've updated the map accordingly. Summary of the offensive. We're seeing a very powerful broad front offensive, with the Russian army clearly pushing toward Novaya Ekonomicheskaya. Attacks are coming from the southwest, south, and southeast. It's possible that over the past day, Russian forces have improved their positions even further, but we don't have confirmation yet. Klebanbek direction. As for the Klebanbek sector, there have been no significant updates in the last 24 hours. Toretsk-Konstantinovka sector. Here, the main fighting is unfolding along the railway line between the settlements of Druzhba, Dakhnaya, Yuzhnaya Delivka railway station, and further north toward Alexander Shultin. Some sources report that the Russian armed forces have seized control of part of the railway, effectively splitting Ukrainian defenses into smaller pockets. Soon, Russian troops will likely clear the southern pockets, then straighten the front line before advancing toward Yuzhnaya Delivka railway station. In short, combat operations here are nearing their end for this small settlement. While there's still work to be done, the hardest part is over. Only mop-up operations remain. Meanwhile, near Nelipovka, the Russian army is conducting airstrikes to prevent Ukrainian forces from massing for potential counterattacks toward the mine area, Novospaskoye or Shcherbinovka Yar sector. Since early May, not just late June, there has been increased activity by Russian aviation and drones in this area, particularly in the Novomarkovo, Fedorivka, Mirolyubovka pocket, and then back toward Chasiv Yar. Pay attention to the high concentration of Russian strikes here. This sector is currently receiving the heaviest focus of attacks, sometimes even more intense than the main assault direction towards central Chasiv Yar, Shevchenko district and Zemlyanki district. Chasiv Yar sector, expanding the foothold. We have repeatedly noted and drawn attention to this situation. There is now a very high probability that Russian forces will expand their bridgehead north of Chasiv Yar along the Seversky-Donetsk Canal, advancing toward the settlements of Maiskaya and Markovo. This would allow them to widen their zone of control and, in the event of a further offensive from Markovo and Novo Markovo, advance steadily toward the railway line and onward to Alekseyevo-Druzhkovka and Druzhkovka itself. This could potentially enable Russian forces to establish full fire control over the H-20 highway, encircle the town of Konstantinovka operationally. Siversk sector, limited gains. Moving to the Siversk front, the Russian army has conducted several offensive operations here. According to Ukrainian sources, assault groups attempted to advance along the railway toward Vyemka, but objective control footage suggests the attack failed to gain momentum and may not have even reached the front line. However, slightly to the north near Hrihorivka, Russian units managed to break through Ukrainian defenses and marginally improve their positions in the central part of the settlement. At this rate, Russian forces could fully secure Hrihorivka within the next week or two, after which combat operations would shift toward Serebryanka. Lyman front, a lull in fighting. The Lyman sector has been relatively quiet for several days, with no major advances. Both sides appear to be regrouping, and Russia may be accumulating forces for a decisive strike toward Borova or Lyman itself. No concrete developments yet. Northern front, Kursk and Belgorod directions. On the Kursk-Belgorod axis, reports indicate Russian advances near Demidivka, more accurately, the Belgorod direction. Neutral cartographers confirm that Ukrainian forces have almost entirely withdrawn from Belgorod Oblast, maintaining positions only along the state border and in forested areas near the frontier. Regarding Tetkino, both Russian and Ukrainian sources report mandatory evacuations in adjacent areas. Russia ordered evacuations in Glushkovsky district, Kursk Oblast. Ukraine evacuated Vorozhba and Bilopilia, settlements near Tetkino. Fighting in Tetkino itself remains concentrated along the border zone, with Ukrainian forces, possibly 1 to 2 platoons, engaging in fierce clashes on the southwestern outskirts. Airstrikes target both sides, but no breakthroughs or encirclements have occurred. The border remains firmly under Russian control. Given the intensity of the first 2 days of fighting, it's unlikely Ukraine can sustain this offensive tempo for long. Drone attacks on Russia. Over the past night and day, Ukraine attempted massive drone strikes targeting Moscow. 105 drones were shot down between May 5th, 9 p.m., and May 6th, 4 a.m., over Bryansk, Voronezh, and Moscow. An additional 25 drones were intercepted later in the day. This suggests that after failing to penetrate Russia's layered air defense near the Kerch Bridge, Ukraine has shifted focus to the northern sector, possibly attempting to open a corridor for strikes during the May holidays. That's all for today, friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and take care.